There is a kind of silence in this world that isn't peaceful. It's not the stillness of meditation or the calm of clarity. It's the silence of someone who has suffered too much. A silence that doesn't ask to be noticed, but needs to be understood. The soul that's been through fire does not return unchanged. It comes back quiet, distant, protective. Not because it has no love left, but because it has seen what happens when love is mishandled. So it hides. Some people will call this coldness. Others will say you're too serious, too much, too intense. But Carl Jung understood better. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The suffering we bury does not stay buried. It becomes the way we speak, the way we flinch, the way we shut down when someone gets too close. If you've ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger to yourself, you're not alone. The mask you wear, the strong one, the calm one, the smiling one, isn't fake. It's not a lie. It's the part of you that got you here, the part that carried you through betrayal, abandonment, humiliation. Carl Jung called it the persona, the social face we wear to survive. But the danger begins when we forget there's a real face underneath it. People who've suffered deeply don't just build walls, they build entire worlds. Inner landscapes where they retreat when life becomes too sharp, too unpredictable, too unsafe. And the outside world often misreads them. They're not unreachable. They're just afraid that being reached means being shattered again, that if they soften, they'll bleed, that if they hope, they'll lose. Jung believed that pain isn't punishment, it's a signal. He said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But no one teaches us how to listen to pain. We're taught to cover it up, to numb it, to rationalize it, so it becomes a shadow, silent but present. We think we've moved on, but we haven't. We've adapted, we've functioned, we've smiled on cue. Meanwhile, the soul is still stuck in the moment it broke. Jung called this the formation of a complex, an emotional knot buried in the unconscious, repeating itself over and over until we are finally brave enough to look at it. Imagine a person who grew up feeling invisible. Not because someone screamed at them, but because no one really saw them. That kind of absence doesn't just disappear. It lingers, it echoes. It becomes a part of how you move through the world. That person grows into an adult who overthinks every message, every silence. They panic when someone withdraws, not because they're needy, but because absence feels familiar, like a room they've been locked in before. So when you see someone overreacting, pause. You may not be witnessing their reaction to you. You might be seeing their reaction to an old ghost, a past pain that found a similar shape in your words, your tone, your silence. They're not crazy. They're in survival mode. To understand the behavior of someone who's suffered deeply is to enter sacred ground. You don't walk in with judgment, you walk in with reverence. Jung said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. We are all shaped differently by what we endured. Some people become caretakers, not because they have space to give, but because they don't know how to receive. They give love like an apology. They fix others so they don't have to sit with what's broken inside themselves. They're praised for being strong, reliable, kind, but inside they're drowning in silence. That isn't love. That's self-abandonment. Others become lone wolves, hyper-independent, proud of never needing anyone. But that pride is often a cover for a childhood that taught them no one comes. So they stopped asking. They do everything alone, not because they want to, but because depending on others feels dangerous. Some stay in their heads all the time, thinkers, analysts, philosophers. But behind that intellect, there's often a deep wound. Because to feel is to risk falling apart. And they've spent too long putting themselves back together. Jung warned us, overthinking is a defense against feeling. A wall made of thoughts, so no emotion can breach it. Others numb with food, with busyness, with perfection. Not because they lack discipline, but because they lack safety. Chaos on the inside turns into control on the outside. And then there are those who vanish emotionally. You talk to them, but you can't reach them. Their eyes are there, but distant. They learn to disappear without moving. Dissociation isn't weakness. It's intelligence. The psyche learned that when the body couldn't escape, the mind could. When you've suffered too much, love stops feeling like a dream and starts feeling like a test. Not because you want it to, but because pain has taught you that not everyone who says, "I care," truly means it. So when someone new walks into your life, you don't meet them with open arms. You meet them with quiet eyes, with a guarded heart, with questions you don't even speak out loud. Because this time, you want to feel safe before you feel seen. You watch, you know blindsided before, and the soul remembers. You pay attention to the way they speak, to how their stories shift. You don't accuse, but you do notice. A part of you is always asking, is this real, or am I about to be fooled again? You feel the energy behind their words more than the words themselves. When they say, "I'm fine," you hear what they're hiding. When they break a small promise, you may not say a word, but something inside you closes. Quietly, internally, permanently, because you've learned that small inconsistencies can be the beginning of a big betrayal. And you don't want to live that again, so you become both lover and the protector. You love in doses. You open the door just enough to breathe. You wait, you watch. And when something feels off, even slightly, your body feels it first. Your gut twists, your chest tightens, your spirit whispers, "This doesn't feel safe." It's not paranoia. It's wisdom earned from heartbreak. And even though part of you wants to trust, wants to hope, the other part remembers what happened the last time you ignored that whisper. So now you listen, even when they smile, even when they say the right words. You listen for what's missing, because silence sometimes carries the truth louder than any sound ever could. Maybe you wish it were different. Maybe you wish you could just relax, let go, fall in love the way they say love is supposed to feel. Light, easy, flowing. But for you, love is weighty. It carries history. It carries memory. It carries ghosts. You walk into relationships with one hand on the door, not because you want to leave, but because you've had to leave before. You've had to save yourself. So now, even when things are good, a part of you stays ready, ready for the silence, ready for the shift, ready for the withdrawal. That's not because you're broken, it's because you survived. But I know it's exhausting. Always reading the room, always double-checking the vibe, always trying to decode what someone really means. You want to trust, you want to rest. But resting feels risky, so you test, not to play games, but to see if they're steady. You ask little things, not to catch them, but to feel their energy. Will they show up when you're quiet? Will they stay when you're distant? Will they still care when you're not easy to love? You're not asking for perfection. You never were. You're asking for truth, for steadiness, for someone who sees your shadows and doesn't flinch. You may stay quiet about your doubts, but inside you're asking, can I trust you? Will you lie to me? Are you here for me or for how I make you feel. And if you sense dishonesty, even just a hint, you feel it like a siren. Maybe you don't confront it. Maybe you give them the benefit of the doubt. But a piece of you begins to close, quietly, internally, permanently. Because when someone has lied to you before, especially someone you loved, your system doesn't forget. You notice the pause before their answer. You feel the shift in tone. You catch the avoidance in their eyes. And while others may miss it, you don't. Because you've learned that pain doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it tiptoes in, hidden in kind words and soft smiles. So how do you move forward? You move slowly. You let your heart thaw one layer at a time. You don't just listen to what they say. You watch who they are when they think you're not watching. Do they care when you're silent? Do they reach out when you withdraw? Do they listen not just to your words, but to your pauses? That's how you know. And if they lie, even about small things, even about what doesn't seem to matter, it hurts more than they realize. Not because the lie was big, but because it triggered something old, something deep, something sacred. We begin healing by turning toward what hurts. We ask it questions. What do you want me to know? What are you trying to protect? What memory do you still guard like a treasure? Because that's the paradox of pain. It doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be respected. It wants to be heard. And through that remembering, it begins to lose its grip. People who've suffered deeply often carry a strange gift. They become mirrors. They see what others miss. They pick up on tone, energy, silence. They feel everything. But if they haven't yet healed, they lose themselves in other people's emotions. They become rescuers, forgetting they need rescuing too. True healing isn't about always being the strong one. It's not about independence or wisdom or perfection. It's about becoming whole. And to be whole, we have to stop cutting off parts of ourselves just because they make other people uncomfortable. There is no shame in having walls. There is only sadness when we forget why we built them. The journey, Jung said, is individuation, the becoming of who you really are. And that journey always passes through the underworld of your own psyche, through grief, through rage, through longing, through everything you were taught to hide. You are not a problem to fix. You are a story to unfold. When we start listening to our pain without fear, something sacred happens. The wound becomes a teacher. The shadows stop shouting. And the inner child, the one who waited for someone to come back, to say the right words, to stay, begins to feel safe. And in that safety, we don't erase the past, we integrate it. We don't forget what happened. We learn how to carry it with tenderness. We don't pretend we're fine. We say, this still hurts, but I'm here. I'm not running anymore. The ones who've suffered most often become the gentlest souls, because they know what it means to walk through fire barefoot. They don't seek to hurt, they seek to understand. But they also need to be reminded they deserve to be understood too. So if you are one of them, if your reactions sometimes surprise even you, if your silence is mistaken for disinterest, if your distance is really a scream for safety, you are not broken. You are layered. You are deep. You are a soul that learned to keep going even when the map disappeared. And maybe now it's time to come home, not by force but by love. Because healing isn't a destination. It's a return to who you were before the world forgot how to hold you. Welcome back, dear one. Welcome to the Wisdom Gate, where your story matters, where your pain is not too much, where your soul remembers it's never been alone. And if this message touched something inside you, Leave a comment below with the words, "I'm learning to come home to myself." Let that be your beginning.